I failed to learn Spanish twice before I got fluent, and I know what made me fail, and I know what made me eventually succeed. There's two main reasons people fail to learn a language. The first reason is that some people just don't have the cognitive resources. If you can barely get out of bed in the morning, if you slack off in all aspects of your life, if you're just not a driven, motivated person, you probably need to make a change to the self before you think about trying to learn a new language. However, most of you watching this video probably don't fit into that category. The second reason people fail has nothing to do with willpower, determination, motivation, consistency, or any other character flaw. The second reason is that you put in a lot of work, but you just didn't see any result. If you fall into the second category, if that's why you failed, then you can easily solve that problem by watching this video. Because in this video, I'm gonna tell you why you failed and how to make sure it never happens again.
What's going on, guys? My name's Nick. I'm the creator of Lengualytics and a fluent speaker of the Spanish language.
The reason I was able to succeed the third time I tried to learn Spanish was not because I tried harder. It's because someone finally told me how language learning works. I was under the impression as a beginner that learning a language was just like learning any other subject in school. A language was a set of rules and vocab words that you had to memorize, and once you did, you completed the lesson. You completed the language, you're fluent. That's what we're told all our lives, and every time I have a conversation with a family member or a friend about language learning, I see that most people still believe that's how languages are learned. If you go into language learning thinking that's how you learn a language, you'll quit in a month. I promise you, you'll never become fluent. If you understand these three following things I'm about to discuss in this video, then there is no more barrier that's going to prevent you from becoming fluent. The only thing stopping you at that point would be you. If you know these following three things and you put in the effort, then you really can't fail. All you can do is quit. The order that I'm going to explain these three things in goes from highest level concept to lowest level concept. The lowest level concept is the final thing I'm going to talk about, and that's the real practical advice. The first thing you have to understand, the highest level concept, is that a language is not rational knowledge. It's empirical knowledge, and that distinction matters a lot. Rational knowledge is knowledge you can arrive at by thinking. For instance, math is rational. If I teach you how to do addition, you can take those rules and you can solve any addition problem I give you, even if you've never seen it before. Empirical knowledge is the opposite. It's knowledge you can only arrive at through experience. You can't reason your way into knowing what fire feels like. You could read every description of fire you can find on the internet, but if you've never put your hand over a fire, you won't understand the feeling of warmth no matter how much you read about it. And once you do feel it, you'll understand it in a way that no description could have explained it to you. Think about it for yourself. There was a point in your life where you didn't know any languages. Now you can speak English. So you learned a language, yet you don't really know any of the rules of that language. You didn't learn the rules of English through a textbook. You learned the rules of English simply because you've experienced so much English throughout your life that your brain has understood it implicitly. I would say your native language lives more in your gut than it does in your mind. The second thing you need to understand is the sheer scale of what you're trying to learn. Because once you understand the scale of a language, you realize how insane it is, the idea that you could learn it from studying from a textbook. Languages have millions of words, and the average native speaker uses about 20,000 to 35,000 of them. But it's not just words, because each word can have hundreds of different forms depending on the grammar of the language those words are in. And in every language, there's thousands of irregular cases that don't follow the patterns anyway. On top of that, each language has idioms that break all the rules in the language anyway. In English, we have long time no see. Does that sound like English to you? Long time no see. It almost sounds like a Chinese person speaking broken English, yet we say that all the time in English. It doesn't follow any of the rules. And there's tons of cases like that. When someone says, I could care less, you're saying I could care less, which means you don't care the least amount. Again, it's just kind of broken English, yet we just use it and we all understand it. And regional variance is a huge factor too in lots of languages. Every single different region has different ways of using the same word. I don't have to remind native Spanish speakers of the problem with coger.
El primero, la piraña, la que está cogiendo, la vamos a encontrar dentro de la lechuga.
Yo no estoy cogiendo.
And that's just the stuff you can write down. There's an entire layer of language that grammar textbooks don't even try to touch, like rhythm and intonation and sarcasm and humor and warmth and formality. All of these things, you can't even write them down in a book if you tried. Yet all of those things are an integral part of understanding the language. Think about social skills. Nobody ever handed you a handbook for how to read a room. No one ever told you when you should make jokes, when you should stay quiet, how you should look people in the eyes, how you should shake people's hands. You've absorbed that from thousands of social situations throughout your entire life. And if somebody tried to write down all the rules of social behavior, they'd never finish because every situation is a little bit different. Languages are at that same scale, that same level of complexity. No curriculum or study plan can prepare you for that. Languages aren't invented. They're communication patterns that evolved over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. It's not like some random guy invented French, wrote it all down in a textbook, and started distributing it to people in France. People in France already spoke French. The textbooks and the rules and the grammar and all those things came from people observing the language. The only language that doesn't apply to is Esperanto, but it's not a real language. The third and final thing you need to understand is a conclusion that you can draw from the first two things. If language is empirical and not rational, if they're crushingly large and complex, then you can't study your way to fluency. You have to experience the language directly. But here's the problem. You can't just jump into full speed native speech your first day learning a language. Your brain just won't be able to handle it. You'll be overwhelmed. That's like walking into the gym and finding the heaviest dumbbells to lift and trying to lift them first, even though you can barely lift the 20s because you have string bean arms. So what do? You find the entry point. You find content in the language you're trying to learn that you can understand to some degree. Accessible content spoken at very slow speeds with lots of visuals if you're a beginner. If you're trying to understand the content, your brain will do what it always does. It will listen, it will build patterns, and a mental model of that language will start to construct itself in your mind. And as that model builds, you'll slowly be able to understand more and more difficult content. This is called comprehensible input, and it's exactly how you learned your first language. Nobody handed you a grammar book as a 5-year-old and said, here are all the rules so you can understand what I'm saying. No. Instead, what happened is everybody around you condescended to your level as a child and talked to you so you'd understand what they were saying. They didn't use big long words. They made sure their speech was simple because 5-year-olds can't understand complicated speech. The more people communicated with you at your level, the more you started connecting sounds to meaning, the bigger the model of your native language grew in your mind, until you were able to understand automatically and speak the language fluently. And that process doesn't just magically stop working when you become an adult. You can still access that same process you did to learn your native language. This is why I failed twice and succeeded the third time. The first 2 times I was given rational tools. I was told to watch grammar explanation videos. I was told to use flashcards, language learning apps. I was studying a description of Spanish written in a book. The third time, I just started listening to Spanish for hours and hours a day at a level I understood, trying to make the most basic things click for me. I was always uncomfortable, it was always ambiguous, but I wasn't overwhelmed. And slowly over time, my brain got to know the language day by day, week by week, month by month. I was slowly building that mental model of Spanish in my head. That doesn't mean I didn't look up information about the language time to time. It just means that my primary driver for progress was time spent with the language as opposed to time spent learning about the language. And the amount of time you spend consuming the language is something that's completely under your control. I had the determination, I had the willpower, I had the motivation, I had the consistency. Once I was told these things, it sounds kind of cliche, but there was truly a fundamental shift inside of me. Fluency became an inevitable consequence of effort, not this magical ability that required some academic knowledge or some special talent. I realized if I could understand the slowest, easiest Spanish, that I could understand Spanish that was a little less slow and a little less easy. And if I could understand that kind of Spanish, that I could understand Spanish that was a bit more challenging, and so forth and so forth. This is not how math works. This is not how history works. This is closer to how mastering an instrument works, or lifting in the gym works. Once we understand language for what it is, it's one long, straight, simple path to fluency. If you're a beginner and you've absorbed what I'm saying, then there's really only one way to fail, and that's quitting. The only way you'll fail is if you quit, if you stop taking in input from the language. If you are taking that journey to fluency, check out my website, Lengualytics. That's where you can track your time and visualize your progress. I built it to be the exact tool I would have wanted when I started. You don't even need to sign up to look around. Please like the video, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.